Welcome to the Published and Paid podcast, where we share book, business, leadership, and life lessons in 20 minutes or less to help you build a thought leadership brand and business. My name is Jasmine Womack. I'm a former middle school language arts teacher turned seven-figure entrepreneur, and I am glad that you are here. Let's get started. Welcome back to another wonderful episode of the Published and Paid podcast. My name is Jasmine Womack, and I'm your host for today. And on the Published and Paid podcast, we discuss all things self-publishing, your intellectual property, and getting paid for it, as well as leadership lessons, business, and life lessons as well. And in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about how to navigate the transition from employee to being a full-time entrepreneur, and a few things that you should consider if this is, something that you are considering doing. Now, I come from a family of entrepreneurs, educators, ministers, and of course, regular everyday career, employees. Like my mom was a manager at the Department of Driver Services. My father owned some subways and other, businesses that he had, tried his hand at over the years. I mean, he also was held several managerial roles, right? With his latest being the district manager over Family Dollar stores for about 10 years before he made a career transition. My aunt was the executive assistant for the sheriff of Fulton County for over 20 years, right? My another aunt manages a call center, like I was just surrounded by, people, my family members who were in leadership, who are in managerial positions or whatnot, as well as ministers and educators on both sides of my family. My grandparents owned subways. My grandfather owned a shoe repair store. He owned the only Black owned shoe repair store in the Columbus, Georgia area. And so I grew up seeing the best of both worlds throughout my childhood. I grew up, you know, going to my grandfather's shoe repair store. I grew up going to my grandparents' subways where they were in the back managing their employees and their employees were in the front fixing sandwiches and things like that. Like I grew up seeing it throughout my whole entire childhood. So for me, entrepreneurship or business ownership was not some figment of my imagination. It was a part of life because my family was doing it. Now, while my grandparents had franchises, a Subway franchise, and my grandfather was kind of just going against the grain and doing his own thing, I was exposed to it. And of course, I was exposed to the other side as well, where my parents just worked a 9 to 5 every single day their whole lives to provide for us. And so my approach to entrepreneurship, I have a duality approach. And especially after having a career in education for 12 years and now being having been a full-time entrepreneur for 6.5 years, I have a different perspective than a lot of people when it comes to entrepreneurship because of my upbringing and because of firsthand experience. Now, naturally, I wanted to be a full-time entrepreneur, as I came into my adulthood because I didn't realize it at the time, but it was just in me. It was just in me. It was something I'd seen growing up. I knew that it was a quicker way or what I thought was a quicker way to having financial freedom and, not having to deal with the politics of work and having control over your time and all the things that people use or say to make it seem glamorous, right? And so I tried my hand at different businesses throughout my 20s, from having a custom crochet apparel line where I would make Greek lettered scarves during the wintertime. I would make custom bathing suits and beachwear for young ladies. During the summertime, I made all types of customized beanies, hats, scarves, afghans, you name it. And although I love crocheting, one of the things that I realized about it was that I enjoyed to do it for me, but I really didn't enjoy the pressure of having to do it as a business. I didn't enjoy being tied to a timeline and having to get someone's deliverable. And because I was literally making it by hand and no design was the same, people wanted them, but they wanted the items at wholesale manufacturer prices, and they didn't want the items for what it was going to cost them for me to sit down and make it with my hands, where they were going to get a one of a kind, product. And so after some time of selling custom crochet items and even, putting them in different stores in the Atlanta area for commission base, I just didn't wanna do that anymore. And so fast forward to my mid-20s, this guy that I was dating at the time and we started a non-emergency transportation company called Peace Transportation. And I was looking for my pictures the other day and I couldn't find them, but we provided a non-emergency transportation service. So what we did, we provided services to the elderly and to people who had, medical conditions such as dialysis and things of that nature. This time I had maybe taught for 3 years and then tried my hand at starting building a business and running it full time. But that's when I was introduced to the world of transportation and understanding how drivers get paid, where you get paid per leg. So we would get paid $9.50 per leg. It didn't matter the distance. Like if you're familiar with the Atlanta area, we could take literally a 30 to 45-minute drive from the east side of Atlanta to the west side of Atlanta, or from north of the perimeter to the south of the perimeter. And we weren't being paid for mileage or time. We were being paid per leg. So it did not matter the distance or anything like that. It was like you pick a client up here, you drop them off at the other end. That's $9.50 and back is $9.50. And so we had to work overtime to make any money. And so I learned very quickly that the best way to make the most amount of money was to get a contract with the center where you were picking up 18, 20, 25 people at one time and then taking them to a recreational activity or something of that sort, but just kind of doing one-on-one here and there. It wasn't getting it. And what I didn't realize, and I'm actually realizing now with even just talking about this, I was being exposed to selling one-to-one versus selling to groups in my mid-20s and didn't even really realize it at that time. But we ended up doing well. We ended up getting a contract that was transporting some special needs clients that actually paid double or triple the amount of the regular routes. And I ended up hiring some drivers and they ended up driving our vans at times when they weren't supposed to be driving them. They were breaking rules, talking on the phone and things of that nature. And because I didn't know enough to have cameras in the van and things like that at the time, they were just really getting over and they got into an accident. They got into two accidents back to back, like day one and then day two, back to back with clients in the van. And because we had commercial insurance, the accidents and the commercial insurance skyrocketed, and I just decided that I wasn't willing to do that anymore, and I shut the business down and went back into teaching during that time. And so it was just a few years later where I had this very strong urge to write my book, and it just would not go away. And so I actually took my tax return. It was about a year after my daughter was born. I took my tax return to publish my book and I made it happen. And literally, that was the beginning of the rest of my life. 18 months later, I closed the year out with $124,000 and I was able to walk away from my job into full time entrepreneurship. But I will say, I was at the time that it happened and the time that I transitioned, it didn't happen when I wanted it to happen and it didn't happen the way that I wanted to happen. I kind of felt like I was forced out. I actually wanted to work as an educator for one more year and really take the time to stack up my money and get things in order so that I could make the transition comfortably, right? But that didn't happen, and I had some run ins with my evaluating supervisor. One thing led to another, to another. And after months of what I felt was harassment, I turned in my teacher badge. I finished out the year. I turned in my teacher badge and I didn't look back. And again, that's not the way that I wanted to leave because I took my job very seriously. I was very serious about the job that I did. I was serious about my reputation and I absolutely love my students. But what I wasn't willing to do was work underneath someone who didn't know how to lead and instead of leading effectively her harass the people that she was evaluating and supervising. And was lying and I just refused to do it. And so I made the transition before I was ready. And I'm here 6.5 years later, ready to talk about it. And so one of the first things that I had to learn as I transitioned and navigated the transition from being a full-time employee to a full-time entrepreneur was that the biggest shift is going to occur in your mind. And I will never forget the day that I woke up and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm not just doing this part time anymore. I'm not just doing this outside of my job anymore. I am my own employer. And so when I realized that I was my own employer and that everything really boiled down to me, it kind of put a battery and an engine in my back where I'm like, I'm the one who has to make this happen. And so in that moment, I also made some shifts to navigating and controlling my time because my first few months as a full-time entrepreneur, I was thinking, "Oh, I can do what I want. I can do what I want when I want. I can wake up when I want to. I can work out whenever." And what I realized is that my days and my time, they were getting away from me. They were flying away from me and I wasn't productive and I was hardly getting anything done, which was crazy to me because I used to always feel like, man, if I work from home or if I did this full time, I would just have all this time to do the things that I need to do. Listen, you can look up and it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon and you have gotten nothing done. And so I realized that the same way that I was on a schedule when I was teaching, that was the same way that I needed to be on a schedule working in my business. And so when people say that they have time management issues, but yet they want to go full time, no, you got to manage your time and your productivity and output as you are actually building your business. Because if you can't grasp that and if you can't control that, you are going to have an extremely difficult time if you ever try to transition and do this on your own full time for yourself. So that meant that I started back waking up at a particular time. I was working out at a particular time. I was sitting down at my desk at a set time every single morning. And so when I started putting those types of strategies into my workday and those procedures into my workday, my productivity skyrocketed because now I was looking at how I was utilizing my time and making the best of it. Okay. I also began a time block, meaning that I'm going to spend 30 minutes crafting this email. When this 30 minutes is done, this email has to be done. There is no excuse. That means that the phone goes on do not disturb. I'm not allowing anything to distract me. I'm locked all the way in. And so I think that there's a misconception that when you are a full-time entrepreneur, you can do whatever you want to do. But the truth of the matter is that you really have to be 3 times as more focused, 3 times as locked all the way in order to get the results that you want. Okay. I realized that if I don't work, I don't eat. So it wasn't like if I was teaching, I was going to get a guaranteed check every month. It wasn't like that. Like, if you don't make sales for the day, if you don't reconcile these accounts, if you don't reach out to these clients, if you're not properly fulfilling the service that you promised, you're not going to eat. You're going to go out of business. Clients are not going to refer your services. So I really had to really get focused on everything that I was doing. All right. Now, when you are in a situation and you're like, okay, I want to transition, but I need some help planning my exit, you want to look at what time you want to plan your exit. Like maybe you're preparing for retirement, the next 3 years, and you have 3 years to get things in order. Maybe you want to transition out of your job in the next 12 months or so. You've got to factor in everything. You've got to factor in the state of the economy. You need to factor in your personal finances, how much you have saved up. You need to factor in, your insurance and all of those types of things. It matters. Now, I will say that for me, I am married. And so I had my husband to fall back on because whereas, a lot of people go into full-time entrepreneurship without insurance, I didn't have that issue. My husband worked at the railroad at the time. He made well over six figures. So I knew that whatever happened in the business, I wasn't just going out there um, just willy-nilly. I knew that I had insurance because I transitioned over to my husband's insurance. I knew that we would be good financially, and I had some time to actually continue to build momentum. Now, I will say this, and I'm going to talk about this later on in this episode, but I was already past six figures in my business when I transitioned out as well. And so that mattered because while I had my husband as a cushion, in case we needed it, I was actually already generating income. But I wanted to stay an additional year to get the savings up, to build emergency funds up, to build these things in place. And because I didn't at the time, I made the transition. We were fine, but it just wasn't on my terms. I know that everyone does not have those safeguards in place. So you're going to need to consider tax considerations. You're going to need to consider your savings, what you're going to do for your health insurance, your vision insurance, your dental insurance. A lot of people go into full-time entrepreneurship without having the basics in place just because they didn't take the time to plan or save. So typically when at least in education, or it was in the railroad too, but when you transition from different careers and you are no longer on insurance, you can pay for Cobra, or now they have the marketplace. You need to make sure that you have adequate insurance. And oftentimes when you are paying for your insurance direct, it's going to be two or three times as much as you paid for it, when you were under an employer plan. So these are things that you have to consider and prepare for. Okay. Do not transition from your job and you don't have the basics in place. You don't have health insurance. You don't have dental insurance. You don't have life insurance. And if something happens to you, you can't even go to the doctor or go to the dentist and see about yourself. These are the things that people talk about when they talk about, going into full-time entrepreneurship, that glamorizes it. But you need to be able to take care of yourself. Do not quit your job and you are not making money in your business and you're going to say, well, I'm going to spend this time to build the business. If you haven't been able to do that while you're working, you don't need to go full time, because what's going to happen is that you're going to struggle to take care of yourself, and then you're going to try to build your business from a place of panic, and that's not how you build. That's not how you build. You won't even be able to grow the business because the monies that you make will be going towards your basic needs. Stop think. I want to break this misconception of that you're not as great of a business owner, or you're not a real business owner if you hold down a full-time job. Y'all stop listening to the foolishness, because there are a lot of people out here who have full-time businesses that are not paying themselves six figures. They're barely making ends meet. They cannot go to the dentist or the doctor because they don't have insurances. Stop letting these people hype your head up with a whole bunch of foolishness that does not make sense, because you don't know what's going on the background. Stop feeling bad for yourself, or stop feeling, less than because you have be thankful for your career. Because if you're going to make an impact anywhere, the first place that you need to make an impact is the place where you are, positively impacting the people that are closest to you, that you work with and that you encounter every single day. Do not leave your job trying to build your business. You should already have a thriving business that is generating income, where you already have at least a VA that's working as an assistant to help you. You don't quit your job to then try to go figure things out and figure out the market. No, you need to already have something that's validated and that's actively selling. Now, while I didn't have a business plan or any of that, I had a business. I had offers that were consistently selling and that I had been consistently selling on a routine for 2 years. And I knew how to set income goals. I knew how to create launch plans and I knew how to predict my income and how to predict the income that I was bringing in every 3 months because I was on a 3 month sales cycle and I was selling them consistently while I was working a full-time job. And I also had 2 coaches as well as a network that I was connected to, a network of thriving entrepreneurs. I think a major mistake that a lot of people make is that they transition from employee to entrepreneurship without the necessary support. You don't have a coach, you don't have anybody else that you're connected to that's doing it. So you're out here trying to throw spaghetti at the wall, hoping it's going to stick, trying to figure things out on your own limited bank of knowledge. And it's not enough. It's like if you go to school to follow a certain educational track so that you can get a diploma, so that you can get a degree. What makes you think that you don't need some type of guidance when you are building a business and doing something that you've never done before? So you're just gonna, we can't just wing it. And that's what I see a lot of people doing. They're just winging it, hoping things are going to work out and then disappointed when they don't. When they don't. This is the importance. It's just like the same way that you went and paid for your degree, you need to be willing to invest in your business education. That you're going to either invest in time, money, or both, either through reading the books and then not just reading the books, but implementing what you learn, hiring the coach, going to the sessions, studying the modules, instead of wanting someone to do everything for you. Why? Because there's a learning curve that you have to feel. You've got to feel the curve. You've got to learn. You've got to learn new things. You've got to upskill. You've got to develop as a business owner. And the quickest way to tank is to think that you're going to develop as a business owner all by yourself. Because when times get hard and you don't have someone to talk things through, you don't have someone that's been there that can share their wisdom with you. The Bible says there in a multitude of counselors there is wisdom. So when you select a coach or a consultant to work with, you first have to select them from a space of wisdom and not from a space of, oh, they look good. They look like they got money, or I like their pictures or their videos. Stop hiring coaches because of the bag that they carry and the number of trips that they're taking. That does not indicate their effectiveness as a coach or a consultant or their ability to teach you. Tune into their live streams, purchase their low cost items, go to their workshops or their live events and encounter them and understand how they teach. See it firsthand before you invest with them longer term. Okay. Now, again, you do not leave a job without a reliable source of income to think that you're going to launch your business or grow it from the ground up. That is erroneous. And I have known people that have done that. Oh, I quit my job because I just trust God and I'm going to give this my all, but you ain't made one sale. No, you're rushing the process and God didn't tell you to do that. That's something you wanted to do. Because when God tells you to do something, there is going to be, you're going to see some results. You're going to see some results. You are going to see some results. Stop quitting your job prematurely. Stick in there and go along the journey. Once you transition from being an employee to a full-time entrepreneur, you should be to the point where your business has blown up so much that having a job is keeping you from making more money. Like, you have to literally work yourself out of a job in your business. Like, that's what it is, not the other way around. Not I'm going to quit my job so I can work on my business. You should be working yourself out of a job so packed with business from your business that now your job is in the way. And I will say that when I transitioned again, I was making 2 to 3 times as much in my business every month that I was getting paid. And I was actually able to pay myself from my business the same salary that my teaching job was paying me. And that's what made me comfortable. Even though it happened earlier than I anticipated or wanted it to, I was confident because I knew how to make money. I kept a constant stream of clients and income coming in, and I had already replaced my salary from my job with what I was able to pay myself through my business. And that's the point, at the very minimum, that's the point that you want to be at in order to make this transition effectively. Now, I do not believe that full-time entrepreneurship is for everybody. I just don't, because I think that there takes a certain level of grit and resilience to be successful as a full-time entrepreneur, because you as a full-time entrepreneur, you don't have the luxury of stopping and quitting when life happens. You don't have that luxury. You can take a moment or you can take a vacation, but you don't have the luxury of stopping and quitting unless you have a certain amount of income already built up or saved up in order to allow you to step away from that, step away for a while. But if you don't, you'll be out of a house and home and a business quite soon. However, if you have a resilient spirit and you know that you were called to lead in a full-time capacity, then by all means go for it. I will say that some of my highest performing clients who bring in the most money in their businesses are actually working a full-time career while managing a multiple six-figure business. And we're talking about $250,000 per year and up. They're still working full-time jobs and have no desire to quit. So I want you to know that you can have a business that brings in a quarter of a million, a half a million dollars in a year while working full time. And because they've kept their job, they have more expendable income. They've got more money to put into their marketing. They've got the money to hire people to run the business while they're at work. They've got monies to invest in other wealth building avenues. One of my clients retired his spouse. So his spouse runs the business while he still works full time at a tenured position at a college. So the options are endless. It can be done. People try to say that you can't work your job and build a business. You absolutely can. I've done it and I've had clients that have done it. You don't need to leave your job to work on your business. And after your business takes off, you can keep your career if you so choose. You can keep your career. You can keep doing the things. You can keep, you might love what you do. You don't have to quit doing that. Okay. You get to control what you do. You get to call the shots. You get to determine how you do it. And I just want you to know that you've got options. Okay. And I just want to take a moment. So if you're thinking about transitioning, you absolutely can. You just want to make sure that you're able to pay yourself from your business consistently before you make that leap. And if you want to grow your business while you keep your job, you can do that too. But you're going to have to learn, you're going to have to put some systems in your business and you're going to have to hire. So I thank you all for tuning in today. If you haven't yet, make sure that you subscribe, make sure that you follow the podcast. Please leave a review, share this with someone who you know needs this, and definitely make sure that you follow me on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn at the Jasmine Womack. And if you are ready to work yourself out of a business or grow your business to the point where now you can actually invest in other wealth building avenues, I invite you to join me for an in-person coaching at our final large scale event, Published and Paid Live. This is where we help experts transform their $1 million message into a best-selling book and high ticket coaching program. You can get all the details and secure your seat at www.publishedandpaidlive.com. Until next time, peace, love, and impact.